Welcome, everybody, to the PinstripeChronicles podcast. I am Tats. I am here with Rob. Donald is taking a day off. Hopefully, he enjoys his weekend. The news came down yesterday that the minor league players will be using robot umps throughout their season. And before I give my take on robot umps, do you think that what's your take on it?
I wanted them for a while. The umpires at the major league level have been so bad, but you also see the downside of it. Like we've seen a lot of the times where they've had like some test runs and you see like the K zone on the screen and a robot ump would actually get the call wrong sometimes. So it's not a perfect thing. And I guess that's why they're using it in the minor leagues, but I hate the fact that they're still using the minor league players and the minor leagues in general as like these test monkeys. I don't like that, but you have to do it somewhere to make sure that the system works. So when you do bring it to the major league level, it's a perfect system with no flaws. But I mean, relying on a robot to get everything right is kind of tricky. So, I mean, we'll see how it goes. I'm kind of like 50-50 on it. Like part of me really wants it because I always scream about robot umps whenever they get stuff wrong. But then I see that it's not a perfect system. I'm just gonna be like, bring back the humans. So I don't really know. It's a tough call there.
Yeah, the way I look at it, when you're dealing with the four sports in hockey, a goal is a goal, and football, you can see clearly when a touchdown is a touchdown. You can see when when a basket is a basket. When it comes to baseball, the human element kind of gives baseball its own aura, where it's not going to be perfect, and that's what makes baseball baseball. So when you have one of those the pitches on the corner, or like a real 12-6 curveball type pitch that can be really, some of these guys are really skilled on how they pitch, where they can trick, if you're pitching well enough where you could trick the umpire, that's a skill for you, and that skill should not be taken away. On the catcher's point of view, which a lot of people don't really give too much thought to, is how we rate catchers also on their pitch framing. So now you're taking that skill set away, and what makes those catchers a little more special than the other. So I think the robot umps would be a mistake, but I do understand why there's been such a push for it. But rather than eliminating the umpires, why can't we just hold them more accountable?
Yeah, I mean, we try to, at least the fans do. We scream about how bad Angel Hernandez is and all these other guys all the time. And it doesn't really seem to matter. I keep thinking about Aaron Judge in this scenario, like, cause he's always had that issue with him being so tall. His strike zone is seemingly different than everybody else's, and he has a lot of low pitches called strikes on him. So how would a computer system, how would a robot be able to interpret his strike zone? Because they're going to have to relay the call from the system to an umpire, and he's going to have to probably, I'm assuming that's how it's going to work. He'll still be there, but he's just going to say that's a strike, and then he's going to get the call in his ear, and he's going to say strike or whatever. So, I mean, umpires need to be held accountable because we've seen them get stuff wrong, even with replay. They still get it wrong, and they go into that. They look at it for a good 2, 3, 4 minutes, whatever, and they hold up the game, and they still get the call wrong. And you're just like, what's the point of replay? Yeah. So, in that aspect, you're like, yeah, just bring on the robots, and if they'll be able to get it right. But if we have all these camera systems telling us, and we're able to see it, millions of people watching are able to see what happened, and they still get it wrong, is that the system we're going to be implementing into these robot umps, for the balls and strikes? So again, if it's not perfect, now we're going to be holding robots accountable. So it's like, I don't know how that's going to work. So it's all going to be a test again, which is they're just continuing to use these minor league players as guinea pigs, and I don't like it. I don't like it for them because they're trying to get to the major leagues. Now they'll have a step up when they get there, it's like with the pitch clock and all that stuff, a lot of these younger pitchers, they pitch quicker. But again, I want it, and then I'm just like, I don't want it because I think it's going to end up being a failed project.
Yeah. You know, the pace of play, a lot of that, yeah, I think that when it comes down to the replay, you're going to see that, sometimes it's like, how come they can't see it yet? We're all watching it, with one camera angle, and we can clearly see that, his foot's not even near the bag. And then it'll take that. They got to see when did the ball go into the glove, So when replay was first introduced, I hated it. I really did. And it was the Gallegos perfect game that was lost. And that was when I was like, you know what? It's time for replay. It took something that monumental where this kid was denied a place in the record books because the umpire made a terrible call. And what I would, and I've said this before, when you're I'm bringing up replay for a reason. I would rather them be able to say that you have, the managers are allowed 2 challenges a game, one for on the field play. And I would say, let them have one, let them be able to challenge one. I know they don't like to say, we can't argue balls and strikes. Well, why not try that first? And before relying solely on the technology. So we're always worried about the pace of play. Now you're waiting for the technology to send the signal down to say, all right, ball, strike, and it's not going to be a perfect system. So it's not like this is going to fix everything, but I think it's also going to affect the pace of play. And I don't think the players are going to be all for it. I don't see how they could be happy about it.
I don't think so either. I know some pitchers are going to want it, some hitters are going to want it, and there's going to be others that are probably against it. So there's another discussion for potential labor disputes. If they try to bring that up, I think they're meeting today, actually, the 2 sides. So I don't know if that gets brought up in the discussions or not, but that challenge system that you just mentioned is interesting. Maybe if they use it for only a strike 3 or a ball 4 call,
yeah,
then they challenge it. That could certainly work. I mean, look, the pace of play has always been talked about, but as long as they're taking 5 minutes to see if a guy's safe or out, why not? I mean, if the robot system works, then the system upstairs should be able to tell you if it's a ball or a strike. And if he got it wrong, okay, it gets reversed. I don't know if they'll do it, but I like that suggestion because why not? Give them a challenge for, like you said, on the field, and if they get it right, they get to use their challenge again, and you have just one challenge, just one. You don't get another one for the balls.
With a draw, you only get the one.
Yeah, I like that suggestion. Yeah, that could work. These are all good ideas that
will never be implemented.
They won't be implemented because the MLB doesn't want it. They want things their way. The players want things their way, I'm sure, when it comes to the robot umps. So hopefully if there's one thing they can get done quickly, it's that, which is why it goes to the minor leagues, because there's no way they can bring this to the major leagues in 1 year and be like, okay, here's your new system. It has to go through the minor leagues first. I get that. I just keep going back to it. I don't like using these players as guinea pigs for test subjects.
No, that's the worst part of it. It's, it's the guinea pig aspect. Nobody likes to be treated like, they're just, look, I'm not here to be a professional. I'm here I'm here so they could use me as an experiment. And that's not, like you said, it's not fair to the kids. They're trying to make their way in life. And we're just going to make it we're just going to keep throwing different things at you because they're changing these rules. It seems like every year now they're adding a rule or they're adjusting something. These players cannot properly develop when every year they have to learn a new rule. The game plays itself, and MLB just keeps getting in the way of these kids' growth. That's the real frustrating part of it.
Yeah, and you got to think about that, especially from players, coming from the international market. They learn the game a certain way, and then they're going to come over and have to learn a whole new system, and then on top of that have to learn the way that baseball is, I guess, played over here, so to speak. It's a little bit different game speed and all that, and it's all a learning process. So, and then they're going to get to the major league level, and it's a completely different ball game there, even because the major leagues and minor leagues, it's a completely different skill gap. So it's a lot of things to be putting on a young player, especially when they're like a top prospect. It's like, okay, now you got to learn a pitch clock. You got to learn how to use the robot umps. Unless it's an actual robot out on the field, I don't see how anyone's going to be okay with the guy just kind of standing there in his spot. And, is it going to be just for balls and strikes, or is it going to be for safe and out calls? Like, how's that going to work? I don't know how you can make that. It's such a on the fly thing, though. Like everything happens so quick. So you want to give the umpires some benefit of the doubt. Like when you're looking at a ball coming in at 99 miles an hour, to be able to have that literally split second decision to say it's a ball or a strike. I mean, it's tough on them. So you get mad at the umpires. We all do, especially when it comes to a guy like Aaron Judge. But you also have to understand that if you're put in their position as well, you're going to get calls wrong, because you don't have the view that they do, or they don't have the view that we do when we're seeing it on TV, because you can see it with the strike zone. It's like, that's a strike. How do you get that call wrong?
Yeah.
I mean, the human element is certainly real there. I
see when that graphic was first introduced on networks, I thought it was, oh my God, this is cool. It's different. It was fresh. It was new. Now I'm like, get that box out of here. I hate looking at the box. So because it does add to the fans' frustrations watching the game. Yeah. So I think that, that's something that maybe they need to scale back on, where almost like when you're playing, when you're playing on MLB The Show, once the pitch is thrown, you can see where the box just disappears on the screen. Maybe, when the player goes up to bat, if the network wants to show where the strike zone for that player is, or where that strike zone would be, but then have that graphic disappear. That's another, idea that'll never see the light of day, but it makes for, a discussion amongst the fans of what people prefer, because it's about what we want to see. But MLB forgets that. It's not just about their pocket. If they want to increase their pockets, they need to keep us as fans and increase their fans. And that's something I think they've completely lost sight of, which we've seen over the last couple of years with all the bickering back and forth.
Yeah. And it's clear that they don't really care what we think.
No.
I'm trying to think of how. I mean, I'm assuming the way it's going to work is the people up in whatever office is probably in New York, where the headquarters are. They're gonna be watching the games. They're gonna have everybody, a different team assigned to each game, like they do for replay, and they're gonna look at the strike zone, and they're gonna press a button, or they're gonna press a button to feed it back to the umpire, and then the umpire is gonna give you the call. This benefits the umpires, if anything, because if the pitcher thinks it's a bad call, he's gonna yell at the umpire and be like, "Hey, don't yell at me. This came from New York. This came from somebody else."
And I usually sit in my little baseball bubble, and I learned the other day, and I know I learned it's not new either. It's not something from this year. But in basketball, the refs give like a report, something I think they call it 2-minute report. You know about that?
You'd have to ask Donald about that one.
Well, where the refs have to explain why they made a call, something like that. I gotta look further into it, but I thought it was interesting. I'm like, why can't all the sports do that? Have the umpires have to explain themselves? Why did they get to hide from the public?
They try to do it with the NFL. Sometimes they'll ask a referee here and there, but it usually happens like way after the game, and they're like in the safety of like of a Zoom chat or something. I mean, the NFL, when there's like a penalty or a challenge, they explain why the call was made, and then they kind of just move on with the game. But you really don't hear from the umpires a lot afterwards. I mean, the referees. So that is certainly interesting. Do we really want to hear Angel Hernandez's explanation though? Because he's
No,
probably gonna
actually, you know what? Yeah, let's pull that idea back.
probably gonna bullshit us
Bet
anyway.
enough we have to look at him, and to hear him on top of it. Yeah, there's gonna be a lot of new TVs being purchased after shit gets thrown at them. But the other thing that was being talked about amongst Yankee fans, as far as the changes go, is they're back on this kick where they're discussing the facial hair policy on the Yankees. Where do you stand on the facial hair policy? Are you for it or against it?
I really couldn't. I couldn't care less at this point. I think they should allow the players to have beards and all that. I just hate that they only allow mustaches. I don't like that. Sorry, Tats. I don't really.
No, that's right.
I'm not,
You know what? If you're paying me millions of dollars and part of my uniform is how I present myself, I mean, you'll never see my mustache again. So I made the decision to, like, at my job, I work in civil service. I have to wear a uniform every day. If I'm not in uniform, I get reprimanded for it. So I knew that going into the job, and I accepted it. If you are that bothered in baseball that you can't, grow facial hair or have long hair, believe me, I wish I just had hair, to grow long. So I think that it really, if the players are that bothered by it, then play on another team. Make room for somebody that really wants to be here, and understands that, there's a tradition, there's a prestige, that, you're working for a company, you represent that company, how that company wants it. So even if they do change it, it doesn't mean that I'm going to be like, well, this is BS and I'm not watching this team anymore. That I think that's, or, it's being, being, so what I'm looking for, being, nitpicking on the players, that speak out on it. Well, if you don't like it, then leave. So it's a very delicate thing, especially when you're talking about people's freedom of expression. And yeah, should you be in trouble for growing facial hair? Not really. But if you're coming over as a free agent and you know that this is part of the gig, nobody's forcing your hand to sign that contract.
that's true. I mean, it's such a small thing. Like, are we really gonna look at, let's say, Gleyber Torres? Because we see him every offseason. Once it's offseason time, he's got the beard. It's like it magically grows back.
Yeah, I know.
It's like he tapes his face. But are we really gonna look at the player differently? Be like, oh, it's gonna affect his play on the field because he has a beard. Like, I don't care if they got rid of the facial hair policy or if they keep it. I don't care. It doesn't matter to me. The only thing that would really upset me is if they change the uniforms completely, because that's one thing you can't do for the Yankees. Is like, you can bring in an alternate uniform. Sure, I want that. I want an alternate Yankee uniform. But if they started changing the pinstripes up or something, like if they got rid of them, imagine that, then that would get me upset. If they just got rid of the pinstripes or something like that.
No,
but facial hair.
Well, that's why when it comes time for Players Weekend, I cringe. I'm like, please don't let it be when the Yankees are playing at home, because the Yankees should never wear anything but pinstripes in that stadium. Leave them on the road for that. That's something that has never changed since those pinstripes started. That's been the uniform, and that's what makes it so special. It's not like this has just been a uniform for the last 25 years. You're way over 100 years of wearing the same uniform. That should never change when they're playing at home. I've come around where Players Weekend, I get it. That they want the players to have a little individuality. I'm coming around on that one. And I'll be honest, I was very against it. I started coming around because it is bringing money into the game. And it is giving somebody a different look. So, the nicknames on the back, that was another. I was like, are you kidding me? Yankees don't have names on their uniforms. That's, not every tradition needs to be broken. You
Well,
know,
some of the nicknames were stupid, if we're being honest.
yeah.
Like Judge was like BAJ. Like, I think, is that a nickname? Baj. Like, are you really to call him Baj or whatever? Gardner was just Gardy. I don't even know if he had a nickname. It's
Well,
like
he didn't
the
want to play
nickname.
because he didn't want anything on his jersey. He
I
wanted
don't
to,
know.
yeah,
It was that whole thing was a cool concept because they did it in the NBA. But in the NBA, you have players that you know by their nicknames, like Kevin Garnett, the big ticket. You know, LeBron James is King James and things like that. Like if Jordan was playing, they'd have his airness on there. You have players
yeah.
that you can, if Kobe, the Black Mamba, like you have players that you know by their nickname. You don't really have that in baseball. So that whole concept wasn't really.
Well, I actually took it a little, the way I interpreted it was, I'm going to say confidently, it was very different than most fans thought of. And it goes to what you were just saying. When they started putting the nicknames on the back, all I could think, like, imagine, Babe Ruth just having the Babe on the back of his jersey, for a charity game, and stuff like that, the Mick, the Iron Horse. So I started thinking about all these nicknames that really gave a mystique about these players. I thought that would be so cool. And that's why I think of all the nicknames that were put on, I thought Kraken was the best, because it was what he was already nicknamed. And it just, it just kind of had like that cool sound to it. Yeah, and there were a couple of like, what was Sonny Gray was what, Pickles, which I thought was, I'm like, all right. Yeah, there were a couple of them, and I really didn't pay much attention around the league to what nicknames were on everybody's jerseys. But I thought, when I started thinking of it that way, with a nickname can give you that mystique, like with Kobe Bryant and the Black Mamba, stuff like that. It does give a little, for a young fan, to have like a jersey that does have, the Mamba on the back, or, Kraken or Pickles, because all I could think of when I saw that was Rugrats,
Oh, yeah.
So that really did bring a different look. And anytime that you could bring in something different that's going to create a debate amongst fans of what, the pros and cons of something, I think that only enhances the sport, because it gives you something to talk about when the game is over. It just gives you that little something extra to talk about, while you're at work, or you're home with your kids, oh, you see, this or that. So I think that does bring a little bit, something else to it. And I try to hold the traditions of, this is where everything is supposed to be. This is how, not, stop changing everything. Some little things do need to be changed.
Yeah. The only tradition I care about in terms of the Yankees is that they need to keep is the home jersey and the road jersey. Don't change them. Don't change anything about them. Don't add some extra stripe on it or whatever. You keep those two jerseys stay the same, but if you want to implement an alternate uniform that they wear on the road, like I love the spring training jerseys. So if they started wearing those from time to time during the season, I'd be all for it. The navy blue with the NY on it is a beautiful jersey, in my opinion. Don't care about the names on the back either. I really don't. And I don't care about the facial hair. I have a beard myself. I used to not be able to have one at one of my jobs, and I hated it. I look weird without facial hair, so I can understand why people want to have it. So I don't think it'd be a huge deal if the Yankees said maybe they become more relaxed on it. They can still have sort of a policy like, okay, it can't go past a certain length, but you can have a beard, like similar to what Gleyber Torres has every offseason, something like that, when Gary Sanchez grows his
it's
out.
got to stay clean.
You got to stay clean.
We can't have what the Boston Red Sox did that year, where everybody was looking like they were auditioning for Duck Dynasty.
Yeah, I mean, it gave them some identity though, because it was like their big thing. Yeah. The last thing we had was the Stash Squad, and it just looked like a bunch of 1970s.
That was terrible.
Yeah, it looked like a bunch. It was fun at first, but then you saw Mark Teixeira's face, and it's
No,
like,
but Mark Teixeira should never have a mustache.
it was funny, but it was still weird. So I'm glad they got rid of it over time. But I do think that if they became a little more relaxed on the rule, then the players can at least be like, I can at least do that. If Garrett Cole can have the hair the way he does, why can't anybody else? You know, like he was allowed to have longer hair, and we haven't really seen. Didn't Damon have to cut his hair when we got him? Like, yeah, he went from like long hair to a completely different person. You know, how weird did Kevin Youkilis look?
The story was his wife was actually very happy that he went to the Yankees because he would get a haircut.
Kevin Youkilis, remember how weird he looked when he came over here?
Actually, he looked terrible without a beard.
Exactly.
Some guys really the beard. The beard was a great look for him. A clean look was not good.
So, I mean, I would be all for it if they said, okay, you can do something, just make sure you keep it relatively clean and a certain length. That's what some companies ended up doing. My old job allowed, like when they allowed facial hair, they had a policy, like it has to be a certain length and blah, blah, blah. So they can do that. They could. Will they? Probably not, because I don't know. They haven't done it yet. So they probably won't do it anytime soon, but it's certainly something that I would not care if they did. It's not going to be like, I can't watch the Yankees play because they're allowing beards. My tradition. It doesn't matter to me.
Well, that's why I made a point to say, just because if they do make any change, it doesn't mean I'm going to stop watching. It's just going to bother me. You know, because it's just something that's always been, and yeah, like they say, some traditions are made to be broken, but these are, when it comes to sports, some traditions really need to be upheld.
Was it Steinbrenner that implemented that rule?
Yeah.
It was George, right? Maybe he just couldn't grow a beard and he was jealous. Maybe that's what it was. He just couldn't grow a beard. He was jealous. He's like, none of you can. If I can't, you can. If I'm paying you, guess what? That's probably what it was. Maybe it is time. Maybe Hal should try growing out a beard. Because look, Derek Jeter's kind of having a little scruff going on. And how weird does it look to a Yankee fan to see him with like...
It's very weird.
It's weird, right? Because you're like, I watched you play for like 20 some odd years with nothing on your face, and now here you are, bald headed with a beard. It's like, who is this guy? But some people, I know the female fans love players with the beard. So hey, you want to get more fan interaction? There's one way to do it.
Yeah.
I'm just saying.
Yeah, I know. It's. I'm gonna keep my comment to myself and keep G-rated at the moment. But just let us know in the comments what you think on the facial hair, the rule changes, and anything else pertaining to the Yankees and anything we talked about. Am I too old-fashioned, or are we just going berserk because we're bored? So and just hoping that today's meeting brings some new information. So just remember, like, share, make that comment, subscribe, check out our social medias in the description. Check out sportnarium.com/player. This is Pinstripe Chronicles. Wear those pinstripes with pride and play hard.